Hopefully you watched a previous video about pesticides. Remember that whenever you use pesticides, they are 99% effective, but they always leave the 1% strongest. And if you have a field full of broccoli, the broccoli bugs are going to have a ton of babies because there's a bunch of broccoli for them to eat. And there's this thing that happens when you spray pesticides. Since you're not going to get rid of every last bug, you can catch your breath, go grab a coffee, come back, and the bugs are back. Maybe not that fast, but they keep coming back. The term is pesticide resurgence. And so what farmers often have to do is just when the pest levels get high enough, you knock them back with pesticide, and then after a few days you have to knock them back with pesticide. It's called the pesticide treadmill, that you have to keep spraying pesticide just to keep pests at the same average low level. Now, pesticide is expensive. It's a hassle. By the way, very harmful for ecosystems nearby because pesticides enter the food chain. Pesticides are very harmful to farm workers and very harmful to the people who live near the farms. And so a lot of farmers try to avoid pesticide by doing this thing called integrated pest management, or IPM. And a key distinction here is the goal is not to completely eradicate bugs, it's just to kind of get to an acceptable level. Like in 1 year, if a farm loses 1 row of 1 crop, that's usually not a big deal. You're not going to freak out because there's a few bugs. Hopefully you can just limit your losses so that it's just a few bugs at the worst, not your entire year's profit. Now, integrated pest management is not one thing. It's the idea that you use a bunch of different alternatives depending on your situation. The goal being that maybe we can get away without using any pesticide, or maybe only as a last resort here and there. Many farmers use integrated pest management just because pesticide is expensive and a hassle. Organic farmers use IPM because most organic farms don't use any pesticide at all. Even regular conventional farms use integrated pest management so that they can use less pesticide. So it's not just organic farmers, all sorts of farmers try to cut down on their pesticide use by doing a bunch of stuff like this. These options are critical for you to know. The College Board, whenever they ask you about a problem, will ask you about a solution or about an alternative. How do you avoid this outcome? So they'll say, name a pesticide, talk about the history of pesticide, what harm comes from using pesticides, and then how could you be a farmer without using pesticides? They always want solutions. So here's some solutions for you. In integrated pest management, you use as many of these as possible. I have used every one of these at some point in my gardens. Number one is biological control. That's using a living thing to get rid of your pests. Maybe you use a predator, like maybe you've heard that ladybugs eat aphids, so you release ladybugs to control your aphids. Biological control, predator. You could use a competitor, like maybe there's a type of mite, and if you release another bug, it'll outcompete the mites for their nesting sites, and so it won't harm your food. You can use predators, you can use competitors, or you can even use germs, like a disease which targets your pest species. So predator, competitor, or disease. These are all living things, so we call them biological control. Another thing that we can do is polyculture, which means to grow a bunch of different things at the same time. One option is monoculture, where you just grow one thing forever. The other one is polyculture, where you grow a bunch of different things, a little broccoli here, a little cauliflower, a little lettuce, strawberries, different stuff. The idea with polyculture is you kind of make it less appealing for the bugs. Like, yeah, they can get a little bit of broccoli, but then they got no place to go because that's the end of their food. And so their populations don't take off quite as fast. By the way, because there's a variety of other things growing, there's also a variety of bugs around. So once you've built a whole ecosystem, the pests usually get outcompeted, they get preyed upon, and usually by having a bunch of bugs, you don't have as much problem with that one bad bug. Remember that most bugs are good bugs or irrelevant bugs. In any given garden, you might have 95% of insects which are beneficial or neutral, and only 5% maybe that are harmful. Now, if you have only broccoli and that harmful species gets there, that'll be 100% problem and you lose all your broccoli. But if you have a whole bunch of stuff growing, well, there's a whole bunch of other things out there. I'm not that worried about it. Another idea is crop rotation. So after you grow the broccoli, let's try some corn. And again, that keeps pest populations from going crazy because now they starve. They got nothing left to eat. If the broccoli bugs are looking through all the corn, they're like, dang it, and another bug will replace them. So biological controls, growing a bunch of things at the same time, growing different things in sequence, crop rotation. Number 4 is to grow native plants or plants that are just there for insects. That's called native gardening or native plants or insectary plants. In many farms, they'll do this around the edges or in strips through the middle along a road or around a drainage canal. Since you can't farm right next to a road or right next to a canal, you leave that for native plants. Idea being that if you encourage more bugs, you'll probably have less of a problem with that bad bug because competitors and predators tend to move in. Something that a lot of farmers do is they use different irrigation methods. Sometimes if you have a lot of puddles on the ground, that'll encourage bugs. So if you run your irrigation underground, or if you time the irrigation differently, then it lowers your pests. Sometimes if you use overhead irrigation, it'll knock the bugs off the leaves. So how you water is a good way to lower your bugs. And then also encouraging the flow of air. Sometimes pests can only live in a farm because they're really packed and so they're protected from sunlight or from birds that eat the bug. So by allowing airflow and circulation through your field, a lot of times that'll limit the success of the bugs. I should point out, in case anybody's curious, that in integrated pest management, some amount of chemicals are allowed. And by the way, in organic farming, there are still some allowed chemicals. These are generally the toxic elements, what we call inorganic pesticides. You might remember the really old school type of pesticides, like copper, arsenic, whatever. They're elemental. So you spray the tree with some kind of powder that kills the fungus on the leaves, and then you wait for the rain to wash off that powder. Anyway, in integrated pest management and even in organic farming, some amount of chemicals can be allowed. But speaking of conventional and organic and pesticide, I gotta pick a fight with a lot of your parents. Now, this is really important to me because I need you to be correct. When you take your AP test, you have to have your facts straight. So maybe you've seen this question recently. We often ask people, why do you eat organic food? And the most common answer nationwide is that organic food is healthier for you. Parents are like, well, I'm a horrible parent and I'm never around, but I do the right thing. I feed my kid organic food or whatever. As it turns out, there is no evidence that is correct. There is no proof that organic food is healthier. People who eat organic are often healthier because they're health nuts, right? They're trying to do the right thing, so they like exercise and they don't smoke and they don't drink too much, and so they tend to be healthy people. So healthy people eat organic often, but organic does not make you healthier. There's no proof of that at all anywhere in the world. This is an ancient data set. Every human eats food, right? So we've got like almost 8 billion data samples, right? And so it should be pretty easy to pick apart, like, oh, the people with the organic versus non-organic, that should be pretty easy to tell. And we've been asking this question since the 70s at least. So we got a 50-year data set worldwide, every country, every town, every city. There is no evidence. There was one study that showed organic strawberries have more vitamin content. Apparently, because conventional strawberries are grown in really low nutrient soils. So with less nutrients in the soils, you get less vitamins in the fruit. But let me be really clear. I've been saying this for 20 years of teaching, and I've pissed off a whole lot of soccer moms and juice cleansing types. And there is no evidence that eating a conventional diet is bad for you. But before you try to get me fired, let's be really clear. Pesticide is bad for you. Like if you have a bottle of pesticide and you drink that, you're gonna die. Like pesticides are really bad for you. That's not a mystery. That is established. But by the time the food reaches you, there's not enough pesticide to matter to your health. You know, our bodies are really big, so you might be able to measure 1 part per million pesticide in that strawberry, but that amount of pesticide in a big old body like mine is not relevant to my health. If it was, there are laws that would keep it away from your food supply. We in the United States have actually like pretty good limits on toxins in consumer products, including food. Now, I want to be really sure that you hear me correctly, because I'm okay correcting you about this, but I don't actually want to fight with your mom or dad. Pesticides are bad for you. Don't consume pesticides. Alcohol is bad for you. Cigarettes are bad for you. Most recreational drugs are very, very bad for you. But I think you all realize, right? If you had like 1 drag on 1 cigarette every 10 years, you're not going to get cancer from that. I mean, that you could never tie the cancer to that. That's too small of a dose to attribute any outcome to such a small dose. Or, you know, heroin is very, very bad, but if you took like 1/millionth of a gram of heroin, you'll be all right. Pesticides are really, really, really bad for you if you like chug a bottle of pesticides, but the amount you get as a consumer in your diet is essentially irrelevant. And most people all over the world eat a conventional diet and they're not dying. As a matter of fact, in America, we have a lot of organic food and we are still extremely sick compared to other populations. So there are many nations which eat less organic, more conventional, but are healthier than us. Now, I don't really care. I think you should keep buying organic food because organic is better for other people, not you. We know that organic food is much safer for the farm workers. And a lot of Americans are less than friendly to our mostly migrant farm workers. But as an immigrant and as a farm worker, I think that's really important. So we know that organic food is safer for the people working on the farm. It's also safer for the people who live around the farms. And it's definitely safer for the birds and the insects and the fish and amphibians that are near or downhill of that farm. By the way, organic food tends to be tastier. That is demonstrated scientifically. That's actually a thing. Organic food is more likely to be local, so there is global trade in organic food, but the majority of the organic food market in Western nations is a more local food market, so that's usually a good thing. We'll talk about that later. And on average, organic food is fresher because it is more local. It's picked closer to ripeness, which is one of the reasons that it tastes better. So there's all sorts of reasons to eat organic. Don't let me stop you. You should definitely eat organic. There's just no evidence that it's healthier for you. You know, people are doing the right thing for the wrong reason, so I'm not going to stop them. I don't like go to farmer's market and tell everybody that they're idiots, right? Like I go to farmer's market, all my homies that sell food at the farmer's market are all organic farmers. And I support those farmers. Better for the farm workers, better for the communities, better for local ecosystems, often better for the consumer in terms of food quality. But when you're taking the AP test, don't say something which is scientifically inaccurate. There is no evidence that organic food is healthier. Pesticides are bad, but not for the consumer of food. By then, there's not enough pesticide to be relevant. I am ready to start receiving angry emails now, so I'm looking forward to checking my inbox soon.